Hi guys, welcome to You Got This, the Takeaway Edition, episode 5. Today's episode is going to be a two-parter. In the first part, this video, I'm going to be answering 3 questions around boundaries. What is a boundary? What is not a boundary? And why are boundaries important? And in part 2, the next video, I'm going to be answering the question, how do I find my own boundaries and how do I set a boundary? Sound good? All right, let's dive in. The reason I wanted to talk about boundaries is because as a recovering people pleaser, setting healthy boundaries is something that I struggled with for a long time. And to be honest, I still struggle setting a healthy boundary for myself sometimes. And I also find that a lot of my clients that I work with struggle to figure out where their boundaries are, how to set a boundary, how to feel okay setting a boundary. And so that's why I want to talk about this today. So what is a boundary? When I need to refresh my memory and get really solid around boundary setting, there's 2 people that I turn to. The first person is Dr. Brené Brown, and she's written a ton on boundary setting, and a lot of her knowledge and wisdom is informed from her research. And then the other person is Chris Marie Campbell, who's also a Martha Beck coach like myself, and she wrote this brilliant piece that really helped me grok what boundaries were, and it was her use of what a boundary is not that actually made the big difference. According to Dr. Brené Brown, a boundary is simply expressing to someone else what's okay with you and what's not okay. Boundaries are typically based on our values, the things that are important to us. A boundary is focused, specific, and individual. It's my preference. Where Chris Marie Campbell's work really helped me was not just in defining what a boundary was, but she took the time to write out what a boundary is not. And this is where the nickel really dropped for me, because she points out that a boundary is not a boundary unless it's explicit. If you don't say it out loud, and if you aren't clear about what's okay and what's not okay, it's not a boundary. And I think that the reason this helped me so much is because as someone who is a little bit empathic, like I pick up on other people's emotions really easily, it took me a long time to realize that a lot of people don't have that ability. Like I can tell walking into a room when there's tension between 2 people. I might not be able to know what exactly the tension is, but I can tell that there's something going on. But I didn't realize for a long time that people couldn't read sort of the underlying emotional currents of, or the stuff that was not being said but was glaringly obvious to me. And this is not a judgment thing. It's just like, I don't know, being able to have perfect pitch or something. It's just you've got it or you don't have it. There's no judgment there. A boundary is not a boundary unless it's explicit. You have to say it out loud. And this is, I think, where a lot of people, myself included, a lot of my clients get tripped up. Where I've fallen down in my boundary setting in the past was trying to set my boundaries through body language or through the way that I'm saying something, just implied boundary. I thought that this was a clear boundary. That's not a boundary. And I didn't realize that for a long time. And so when Chris Marie wrote that boundaries are not implicit, this was like, bing, oh yeah, okay. So a boundary is not a boundary unless you say it out loud. You have to say it out loud. Spell it out for the person. Don't expect them to read your mind. You're not allowed to get mad if they're not picking up on the signals, because you are not setting a boundary unless you say it out loud. The other thing that Chris Marie takes the time to point out is that boundaries are not about controlling other people's behavior. A boundary is personal, so it's individual. It's about you. My preference is XYZ. It's not about getting what you want every time, every place in the world, unfortunately. The person that you're communicating this to gets to decide what they want to do with that boundary. They may not like it. They may not comply with what your preference is. And then you have to make a choice what you want to do from there. But it's not about controlling the other person's behavior. It's just about letting the other person know what you prefer. The other thing that I think it's important to point out is that boundaries are not about complaining. This is not an invitation for you to dump on people. Nuh-uh. A healthy boundary is clearly and cleanly stating what you prefer, stating what's not okay with you, and leaving it It's not an invitation to, bring up every single thing that has ever bothered you about this person since the beginning of time. No, that's not clean. That's not setting a boundary. That's just whinging. Sorry. The last thing I want to touch on this first part of this two-part video is why we set boundaries in the first place. Okay, we know what they are now. We know what they aren't. So why are we doing this? Why, Jude? Why do I have to set my boundaries? So why? Why do we do this? Don't make me do this. The reason we want to set boundaries is because it fosters respect. Respect for yourself, respect for the other person, and respect for the relationship. It builds trust between you and the person that you're setting the boundary with. Sometimes when we don't set clear boundaries with people, we end up de facto making other people responsible for where our boundaries are. And I'll give you an example. I went out for a coffee date with a couple of girlfriends a while ago, and we got to talking and the time just flew, as it does. I love having those kinds of conversations. But at one point, about 2 hours in, I noticed that the one lady started checking her phone to check the time quite frequently. And I got the sense that she was late and wanting to leave, but didn't feel comfortable to say, hey guys, I got a jet. And so I started to check in with her. Are you okay? Do you need to go? It seems like, you there's no hard feelings. Go for it. We've been here for a while. And she went, no. And so I didn't really trust that what she was telling me was truthful. I don't think she was actually telling me the truth. I think she did have to go, but she didn't feel comfortable to say that she had to go. And so now I felt responsible for setting that boundary for her, saying, if you need to go, you go, there's no problem. And it's not a very comfortable place to be. It doesn't empower me. It doesn't empower her. And so a nice, healthy boundary creates trust between people that you value. In a friendship, you want to be able to trust each other. Another reason why setting boundaries is so important is because it frees up energy. I'll give you another example. I have a girlfriend who is chronically late to everything. And I am one of those people that considers herself late if she doesn't show up 15 minutes early. And so, most of the time I don't care that she shows up late. It's no biggie. But there's certain events that stress me out if she shows up late. And so when I'm able to say to her, hey, it's really important to me today that we're on time. How can I help you show up on time? Do you need me to pick you up? Whatever it is. When I can set that boundary, it means that I don't have to spend all that time before the event worrying about whether or not she's going to show up on time, or after the fact, being angry about the fact that she didn't show up on time. When I set that boundary, it frees up my energy. And even if she does show up late, I've at least said, hey, this is important to me. And that goes back to that fostering the trust and respect in a relationship. The final reason why it's so important to set boundaries is that it creates really strong relationships. It fosters communication in a relationship. What I hear from my clients a lot of the time is that they are reluctant to set a boundary with someone that they care about because they don't want to put the relationship at risk. But here's the thing. If you're in a relationship with someone who cannot hold the truth of your boundary, like that's not okay with me, then maybe it's not the kind of relationship you think you have with that person. So to recap, a boundary is simply stating what's okay and what's not okay with you. It's stating your preference. It's about you as an individual. It's focused and it's explicit. You got to say it out loud. A boundary is not implicit. It's not implied. If you're throwing off hints and giving signals, you're not setting a boundary. It's not about controlling the other person's behavior, and it's not about dumping on someone. It's just about saying what's okay, what's not okay. And boundary setting is important because it builds respect, it fosters trust in a relationship, and it gives you an incredibly strong foundation in the relationships that are important to you. So buck up your courage and set those boundaries. And tune in next time, and I'll talk to you about how to find where your boundary is, how to figure out what is okay and what's not okay with you, and about how to set that boundary. And also, I'll talk a little bit about how to wrangle those thoughts around what's going to happen if you set a boundary with someone. There's a lot of fear that comes up with people when we set boundaries. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that in part 2 as well. Please remember to like, share, do all that social media mojo magic stuff that you can do for me. Follow my YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, all that fun stuff. And please send me your questions, anything that you're struggling with, anything that you would love some help with. Send me your questions and I'll get to it on another episode. Okay, thanks. Bye, guys. Setting and... So, episode... No! Hi, guys. I'm doing this again. Lovely and ladylike.